continue on. So now let's go in and add some additional information to our brand new store. This is going to finish out what we need to do for this store that we're working on. All right, so I'm going to go to the All Stores form. And since we created the operating unit in a previous episode, that created the entry in this screen we're looking at right here. But now we need to flesh some stuff out of it, to finish filling it in. We put in some stuff, but we need to finish it out. So let's scroll down and find our new store and click on it to bring up the details. I'm going to go ahead and put it in edit mode because I know I'm going to need to do that anyway. And I'm going to expand all my fast tabs. See how some of these are smushed up, collapsed? So I'm going to right click on this little arrow. Any of the arrows on the fast tabs work. Right click and say expand all. Give it a few seconds. And now all my fast tabs are expanded, which is awesome. That's exactly what I need. Okay, the first thing I want to do is be sure up here in the setup area that my payment methods are set up. Do I take cash, credit card, check, gift card, loyalty card, all that? Make sure my cash declarations are set up, which denominations I accept on this POS. The modes of delivery should already be ready to go, but we'll check them. And then all the income and expense accounts for this POS, etc., etc. And so one of the easy ways to do this is to copy all of this stuff right here, these three, really these four, from another store that's already set up the way you want. It makes it so much easier. Now you don't have to do it this way, but it makes it faster and it keeps your setup consistent for these particular forms, okay? So I know that the Houston store has the data in it that I want to copy over to my new Denton store. So I'm going to click this copy all button right here. And it says, okay, who do you want to go from? So I'll say from the Houston store to my Denton store and then click OK. All the values are copied. And so now I have payment methods here. All that stuff all set up the way I want. I have cash declarations, so which types of denominations this POS accepts and the currency for them. All good. And then the income and expense accounts, I only have two in this particular environment, but usually whenever you're out in the field, you have multiple, right? So you can have different income accounts and different expense accounts for different things. Like if you're bringing in money to your POS for some reason other than sales, you need to put it to the correct place in the GL. That's what the income accounts are going to be able to do for you. And then whenever you're taking money out of the register, for anything else other than putting things to a safe or taking it to the bank, etc., then you need an expense account. Now, back in our payment methods screen, I copied over the payment methods from the Houston store. And so if there are any store-specific things in your payments setups, then you have to go in and maybe make a slight tweak for your new store. So let's say for your cash payment method, you have the bank account or the ledger account set to a specific number that represents that store, the Houston store, right? Well, I need to come in here, if that's the case, and change it to point it to the Denton store. This environment doesn't have that, but if you did, just keep that in mind. So now let's fill in our data here in this screen. So the name, we've got that the way we want it already. The shipping warehouse for this particular entry is going to really be itself, so that our fulfillments that we're going to be doing out of the store later on will work properly. So we'll point to ourselves for that one. The time zone is already set from when we did the operating unit, Central Time. Functionality profile. So this field is really going to set what kinds of things are going to be allowed here. So let's just take a look. Here's the ones that I will be using called Mail Test. And let's see what it's all about. Right click, view details. So you can see what I mean. See here all this yes, no, yes, no, yes, no stuff. You can say, what kind of receipt are you going to use for the receipt email profile IDs? Are you going to allow the X and Z reports to be printed? Do you want the products aggregated on your screen when you're scanning? Do you want them aggregated when they're printing? Do you want starting and tender amounts required? All these different kinds of config things that we can do. So those are, I already have them set up the way I wanted it. And I have this one set up to not do the asynchronous customer creation process and instead use the real-time service. That's just what I had going on in this environment, so I'll just keep on using it. This is also where you'll attach any info codes down the line to certain parts of your POS transactions so that you can get extra information on a given transaction. All right, so now that we looked at that, let's just back up and continue. So channel profile, this is going to be on tier 2s and above, pointing to your cloud scale unit. But for me, I'm on tier 1, so I'll just do default for that one. The live channel database is usually going to be exactly the same as your channel profile. And then for offline profile, we're just going to use this default here of AX7. So in case you haven't noticed or heard, one of the types of POSs that D365 has allows you to work without a connection to F&O, to the back office, right? And so it can let you keep selling if that connection is lost for any reason. It could be that the internet goes down. It could be that there's some kind of an Azure outage or something preventing that connection to happen. Anything like that. If you have a reg that has offline capability, you can continue selling and doing most of the stuff on the POS that you would do if you were connected live. Now that would be the Store Commerce app and the older school MPOS, modern POS, that allow offline. Store Commerce for web, or as it used to be called, the Cloud POS, Cloud POS, those do not allow offline capability. So just a little lesson about what offline means. Here in our regional settings, I'll put that we're using US English, and our main currency is US dollars. And then in our sales tax group area, we already had Texas because we chose that at the operating unit. Remember, in real life, you would have a very specific entry here that has to do with the tax jurisdictions where your store is. And then any of these other fields that are included, destination-based tax or prices include sales tax. We'll leave those blank for now. Sales tax override group, you choose the one that applies. And so we'll choose the default here. And very important, it wants to know what our customer address book is for the store and what the employee, the worker address book is. So the customer address book one, we're going to use that big catch-all that I told you all about. And that for this environment is called Retail Cust. So I'm going to click the drop down and it's going to allow you to multi-select if you want to. So, but I just want to choose the one big one. So I'm looking for Retail Cust. There it is. Select. I will choose the address book for this particular store. And if you remember, I created it, one of the very first things we did. And so I will look for that Denton worker address book. There it is. And click select. The default store customer, it's already set for us here because we did it during the operating unit setup. That's that default retail customer that I wanted. For email notification profile, what types of emails are going to be sent? I'll just use this base we got here. For manual accepting of orders, I will leave that as no. You could set it as yes, and so that any order that's brokered to this store to fulfill will automatically be accepted. If it's set to no, then someone has to manually accept. And that's usually the safest way to go. All right, down in our statement and closing section, we're going to set these to work on the shift closing method because when we're going to use trickle feed statement posting, which is the preferred statement posting method that we have today, shift usually works best because it's looking for the end of closed shifts in order to know when they're done and dusted to bring them into the statement. So it's already set to statement method of shift. One statement per day, we'll set that to yes. Start amount calculation, we're going to set this to last instead of sum. The reason for that is when it's set to last, someone can come in and correct the starting amount. If you put in, I've started with 200 and you're like, oh no, I've really started with 3, I made a typo. You can go back in and type in 300. With last, it's going to take that 300 as fact. If you left it as sum, it would take everything you enter and add it up. So in my example, if I put in 200 as my start amount, and then I came back and said, oh wait, no, it was 300, then it would say, okay, you started with 500, right? So just know which way you want to go. I like last. And I'll do the same for bank drop and tender declarations. And then for the rounding account, so you're going to put in the GL account that the system will use if you're doing any kind of rounding. So this is really applicable in certain countries who are rounding transaction values up to a certain amount because they're no longer using smaller coins, right? And so if the transaction ended like $17.03 and you were rounding to the nearest 5 cents because you're not using pennies anymore, then that money over and under for the rounding would go to this GL account. So I always fill it in even if I'm not using it. And then the maximum rounding amount is going to be 2 here. That's what I'm using for my setup. Now the maximum difference for posting. This one's important. This is all about how risk averse your particular finance team is going to be about transaction posting, especially the financial statement posting. How much are they willing to allow the store to be off in their till for the day without someone having to go in and manually take a look at the statement and see what's going on? A lot of companies keep this pretty low because they want to, if there's any kind of overshort in the till, they want to look at why, right? So I'm going to just put mine, I'll put it pretty high, like, I don't know, 250 or something. It's usually could be as low as 0 if you want to look at everything that's over or short at all. Or it's usually some kind of tolerance that the finance team decides is desirable. The maximum difference for a given shift, I'll just put these in at $1 and maximum for a transaction. So this is for the whole statement and this is by shift by transaction. So you can get as granular or as wide as you want to be. And then finally, our closing method of shift right here. All right, in the miscellaneous section, we need to put in here which type of our payment method is going to be used when we're doing removing money from the reg or adding money to the reg during our operating day whenever our cash is running high or low or something. And so I'm going to use the drop down and choose the one that I have set up already for tender, remove, and float. In our financial dimensions fast tab, fill in any that apply to what your particular environment needs. I'm going to do cost center of mall. And if you know anything about financial dimensions, it's all about how you configure them. And there's a sweet spot for how many financial dimensions that you have on your project. Dun, dun, dun. And for department, I'm just going to go 033 and leave it at that. Down here for screen layout is that this is the main screen layout used for all regs that are going to be attached to this store. So this is that most wide assignment of screen layout. Remember that you can trump that with the registered layout and the layout attached to a worker. So I'll just use one that I like, F3MGR. Let's skip this one for just a second and come down in our retail service profile. I'll just choose default here. These particular sections at the bottom are all about our Sunrise 365 IP that Sunrise offers. So we'll skip those for now. Let's go up and set up our hardware stations here. So I'm going to click add. And then I'm going to do the hardware station type for my Store Commerce app. And since I'm not doing a hardware profile for the Store Commerce for web, I can leave that one alone. So I'm going to do the type of dedicated and just call this local hardware. Leave host name and port blank for now for me. This is what, if you're working on actual connectivity to peripheral devices, these will probably be different for you. And then the hardware profile, I'm going to leave that blank since we already set that on the register. And now I'm going to look at the configuration status to see how we're doing. So let's click that and see if we've got all the basic stuff. Missing a couple of things here. So price groups and store locator. And so let's take a look at price groups. I can go right to it from here. All right, so let's add some price groups. Actually, let's look at one of our other stores and see which price groups they have. And maybe we can try to mimic. So I'm going to go into another tab, open all stores. I'll look at my Houston store. And then up here in the store menu and the price groups menu here, it's got mall and then one specifically for Houston. So I'm going to attach that mall one for now. So I'll click New, choose Mall, just to get us started, and click Save. All right, I'm going to back up. I could add more price groups if I wanted to, just for this store. That would allow me to do very store-specific discounts down the line. That's what this Houston store had going on right here. All right, so let's back up on my Denton store. I'll update it and let's see if we're cool on price groups. Yep, but we're missing store locator. So let's check that out. Fulfillment group assignments, that needs to be filled in as well. So let's take a look as one of our other stores, what they have for fulfillment groups. So if I go to setup and then go to fulfillment group assignment, let's see what's happening here. So I have two here. I have one for mall stores and then I have another one I was using for testing called mail stores. So I will do mall stores for sure. And we'll just leave it at that. Okay, now let's update. Now we've got the basics. Everything's checked. Very good. Okay, so now we have all of the stuff set up so that now we can go in and validate the devices we set up for our two POSs. So let's do that. Go to Devices, look for our Denton stores. Okay, so remember my login was 0009. I remember that from a previous demo we were working on. I'll click Validate. 0009 and click OK, and look at our message right up here, passed. Now this little message is tricky because if it's passed or failed, it's the same color and it really kind of looks the same. So pay attention to what this says, passed. Excellent. Let's close that and do the same for our reg number 2. Same worker, passed. Good. So both of our devices and regs and all of our store setup is ready to go. If for any reason I had gotten a failure message during this validate devices for activation, I would go remediate whatever was the underlying problem that it was telling me it was missing, then come back in here and then validate. End of the day, the validation needs to pass for both. All right, now it's time to run our jobs that take the data from finance and operations, or what everybody calls the back office, the commerce back office, which is what you're looking at right here. We're going to run jobs that take all this information and push it down to all the POS units. That's going to be, it's what's called the channel database form, where we're going to kick that off. There's really two places where you can kick off these jobs, but they have two different uses. The one we're about to do is going to kick off a full push of the data jobs. Another one that I'll show you later on is going to kick off an incremental push of those data jobs. What full means is that it will look at the POSs, and for the tables that hold all this data, the full is going to wipe all those tables in the POS and push down a brand new full copy of all of the data, the items, the prices, the customers, everything, the setup information, the store information, all that. Full means wipe and replace on the POS side. And it takes a little bit longer, could take quite a bit longer depending on how much data you have and all those tables. The other form that we use from time to time does an incremental version of that, where you will push down that only the changes that have happened since the last time you ran a job push. But whenever you're doing a new store, hint, pro tip from me to you is to do the full push. Because when you're doing a new store, if you try to do just the incremental, you're probably going to run across some little weird problems. Things aren't working quite the way you think, whatever. The full will take care of that. But be careful. The full push that we're about to do should only be done when stores are not in operation. So this is very important for production environments. Never kick off what I'm about to do, the full method, while the stores are operating, because it brings all your POSs down to a crawl, probably to a stop. and you won't be able to do a thing, right? Believe me, I've been there. Don't do it, right? So only run what we're about to do when stores are all closed, or if Microsoft says, go run this, right? But in your tier 2 environments and your test environment, especially the dev environment that I'm working in, I really have a way more freedom to do what I need to do. So I'm going to go and run the full version. That's from the channel database form. We've been here already. We come here again because we want to kick off the full data sync from here. So I'll click on my database. I only have one. You probably have your scale unit if you're tier 2 and above, or more than one scale unit. So you click on the one you want, click this drop down, and then it says, okay, which one of these jobs do you want to do? Just data about currency, just data about customers, about the prices, etc., etc. Well, when we're doing this new store thing, I want to run all these. And so there's a job for that. If I scroll all the way to the bottom, see this little fun 9999? That runs everything in the list above. So that's what I'm going to run in full mode right now. All right, it's going to leave it in batch. I'm just going to call it the same thing as what it defaults to. Click OK. And now we'll wait to make sure that the batch job is finished, and we'll look to see if the jobs have actually been applied to the channel databases for the store. So let's look at our batch jobs. I will search for 9999. So this is the one we have going on right here. And it is executing. So we'll let it do its thing. In the meantime, I'll just show you the other method that you can use of kicking off the incremental job. So once you run the full like this, going forward, as long as you don't have any other new stores, the incremental should work just fine, right? And you can run those incrementals all day long, whenever you want. Even in production, should not affect your operations at all. The full will, the incremental should not. So just so you'll know, the incremental is kicked off from the distribution schedule form right here. So here you would find the job you want, click on it, and say run now. Or you could create a recurring batch job for it by clicking create batch job. And if you aren't sure which one that you need to run to get down the data you're looking to get down, go scroll all the way bottom and run the every job 9999 version of this one. But this is the incremental method as opposed to the full method. Let's go check on our full sync. I'll just refresh here. Almost done according to the progress. Okay, looks like our job finished because it's down here with the status of ended. Excellent, but for both the full and the incremental version of these jobs, we need to make sure that not only is the batch job finished, but did the jobs actually apply to the channel database? So we'll take a look at that through download sessions. And here we go. I see a whole bunch here that just say available. I want everything on my screen here to say applied. And so I'm going to sit and watch this screen and refresh it with this little guy right here until I see that everything is applied. So while this is running and applying, I'll go ahead and do one of my last steps for new store setup, and that's to add my new store to my trickle feed statement posting jobs that I already have set up in this environment. So let's go check that out. So I'm going to go to another tab. I'll leave that one up for download sessions and we can check on it later. So I will go over to our batch jobs. And I'm going to have two jobs. For the way I've configured it, I have a batch job for trickle feed transactional statement calculation and posting, and I have a batch job for trickle feed financial statement calculation and posting that I need to make sure that my new store is assigned to. So I will come in here and look for my jobs. And because of the way I named them, I can find them pretty easily by looking for the word trick. So here is our financial and transactional. So I'm going to do the transactional first, but I'm going to put it in withhold status so that I can work on it, right? So I'll click withhold throws it kind of down here in the middle. I'll just bring that up so I can find it again pretty easily. So there we go. And then I will go ahead and do the same for the financial one. Okay, so now let's work on our transactional one. So I'm going to go into my batch tasks, view tasks. And then here's all the steps that I have for my stores. So I've got consistency checker, I've got the calculate, and I've got an entry for every single store for the posting. So I need to do at least 3 things. I need to add my store to this one, add my store to that one, and then make a new task for my store for that one. So let's go and add our store to this first one. So I'll click parameters. And I see here that one of these tip-top nodes, let me just collapse them down. The tip-top node for Retail USA is already selected. So if I look under that, is my store a part of that? It's probably going to be in the central area. I'm looking for Denton. There it is. So my store really already is included in that one. So I don't need to touch it. So I'll just cancel out of there. Let's look at the calculate step and see what's going on in its parameters. Ah, this one is store by store by store. So let's find our store. It's going to be in the central one. There it is. Select it. And then it threw it in over here at the top. Click OK. Great. So now I need to create a new entry for this one. So I'm just going to pull these off onto Notepad so that I can just copy and paste these 2 values, the task description and the class name. So I'm going to click New. I'm going to use that Notepad, change it to My Store, put in USRT, and then put in that class name that all the others had. Click Save. Sometimes that first time you do it, it's going to take a little while to actually save. See this? Okay. Now that saved the entry, but we need to do our conditions. So see all the others of the post batch tasks that we have going on. They all have a condition of running the calculate job in ended or error status first before it kicks it off. So let's come into ours, click a new condition, find that calculate job, and that has status ended or error. That's what we were missing. And so this first one runs first because there's no condition. The second one will run when that first job is finished or it's errored, either one. And then as soon as that's done, each one of these will spawn at the exact same time because they're all using this as the prereq. So we're good to go there. I'll just save one more time for funsies and exit back out. And now I'll put this back into waiting status because this job is now good to go. But now let's look at our financial statement trickle feed entry. So we're going to this one, look at its tasks. So now let's look at the parameters for this calculate task. All right, again, just like before on our transactional first task, it was already at a higher node. So we're good. Our store is already included. Awesome. So now let's do the same for the posting task. Same thing, higher node, good to go. We don't have to make any changes at all. But every time I add a new store, I come in here and I check because I never know if somebody's changed this setup since the last time I've been in here. So I make no assumptions. All right, so we'll just exit out of here, put this back into waiting status, and our trickle feed statement jobs are ready. So now let's go check on the status of our download sessions to see if all of our data has been applied. I'll come over here and refresh. And they have. Look at that. All of the jobs have been applied. And you can see that they're fulls by looking at how many rows is going on. Kind of clues you in, right? Some of the incremental jobs that have been run throughout the different days are smaller, right? Only 3 records here. 1 there, 1 there, 1 there, that kind of a thing. All right, that puts us at a really good spot to stop so that we can then move on with further demos on actually installing our POS apps. See y'all later.